His words are proven to be true. And one last thing, when we're mixing our bioclouds together and all the different things are going on, let's remember to, as the 17th book of Israel says, learn to tolerate each other, please, while we're learning, okay? And tolerate each other and learn how to serve each other. Thank you very much. And I'd like to now turn it over to the great Kohan, if you all please stand, the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. You see this? The Feast of, I want you to keep all these words in your mind as we travel through. Feast of Weeks, Feast of Harvest, Feast of Reaping, Binding Feast, the Reaping and Binding Feast, and Feast of First Fruits. Keep all that in your mind. You're going to hear about this. First fruits. Remember what number that was? 1074, right? Pastor's tag. Keep these numbers in your mind. Okay, can I have my first slide? Everything I'm going to tell you today came from this sermon from 5/22/04. 5/22? 14 years ago today. Yahweh is preparing his house from death that is going to be all around us by the internal and external cleanses. 7/7, 14 years ago. Very interesting. Did you know we're living in Psalm 91 right now? We're living it today. Pastor began in 2004 to teach us about the last law of the sealing of the saints. And that's the law of the ashes of the red heifer in Numbers 19. And you know, Moshe, he followed the same pattern as Moshe because Moshe started teaching. First, he taught the Sabbath, and 20 years later, he started teaching the people about this law in Numbers 19. Same thing Pastor did. Okay, now, let's go to the second slide. And this sermon from 5/22/04 is all about Psalm 91. It's all about it. He just goes through the whole psalm, showing how we need this protection from the plagues that are fixing to come. The mass death that's fixing to take place, we all need to be protected. And the only protection we have is in following the one sent and everything he tells us to do. Everything. Now watch closely. I showed you this last time. Father Yahweh, Yeshua Messiah, and Israel Hawkins. I showed you the 2874, but I didn't show you the other number, 4521. Can I have my next slide? It means Sabbath. It means Sabbath. And remember, every Sabbath, Sabbath to Sabbath, feast to feast, new moon to new moon, we come here and we learn how to get this protection that we're going to need now in this last 3.5 years. Can you taste it? Okay? It's from 7666. Next slide. It's from Shabbat. And it means not just the seventh-day Sabbath, but all the Sabbaths, feast day Sabbaths as well. Okay? And it means, let's go to the next slide. 4521 in the Greek, actually in the Hebrew. That one went from Greek to Hebrew, but it means portion, an allotment, a law, or portion. It means appoint, prepare, set, to allot or constitute officially. You know, these are our appointments with Yahweh, these Sabbaths. Can I go to my next slide? Now, this law of the red heifer in Numbers 19, if you had a book of Yahweh with the numbers in it, Moshe gave that law in 1471. Remember, he brought him out of Egypt in 1491 BY. 20 years later, he gave him this law of the ashes of the red heifer. Let's do a little math. Next slide. That's 3,475 years later, Pastor gave this same law to us in 2004. Can I have my next slide? 3475 is the word yesher, uprightness. From 3474, remember yeshurun? To be smooth, straight, or right. Agreeable, esteemed right. And let me show you something in this sealing of the saints, the third book of Israel that I'm reading out of. The very first sermon in that book, look what it's called. The house of Yahweh is making straight the way to Yahweh. Making straight. That's what yeshurun means. That's what this word means. Okay, and it means agreeable, to esteem right, to fix straight and make smooth. Next slide, please. 3475 in the Greek. No, it's not mouses. You know, they always mess everything up. That's Moshe. That's Moshe. Moshe, the same, you remember? Moshe said he's going to raise up a prophet like me from among your brothers. And everything he says, you need to hear him. That's Israel Hawkins. We need to hear him and do what he says. Okay? Next slide. You're going to remember this because we talked about this before. In Psalm 91, it says, under your shadow, O Yahweh, in the subtitle. And it's word number 3484. What does that mean? Can I have my next slide? 3484 is Yeshurun. Yeshurun, remember, beloved Israel, Isaiah 44. Remember? Okay, he's showing you who is going to offer this protection through the preaching and teaching that he's giving us. It means upright one. It's from 3474, the number of years from, remember, 475 to 3474, and it has the same meaning, fixed straight. You know, remember, he's the upright one, not the upright rod in Galatians 4 where they set their feasts incorrectly. The gnomon, remember the sundial? The upright rod is Pastor Israel Hawkins. He's setting everything straight for this world. Okay? Now let's take a look at 3484 in the Greek. And this is really interesting, I guarantee you. Now, this is the Yahmatria of under your shadow, O Yahweh, 3484. Can I have my next slide? Okay, it's 3484 is the word Nain. It's a village of Galilee. And it says, see Hebrew, Na, 4999, Na. And it means habitation, house, pasture, pleasant place, a home, a home, a home. You know, remember what Pastor told us the other day about a home. Okay, can you go to the next slide, please? All right, now get this. It goes to 4998, and it means to be comely or befitting, to be at home. And now look, it also means beautiful. It means to be at home, to be pleasant or suitable, beautiful, be beautiful. And it's speaking of the feet of the messenger. The messenger, the messenger. Who's the messenger? That's right, Israel Hawkins, the messenger, Yeshurun. Okay, that's exactly what it's talking about. But now in this sermon here, Pastor, in this sermon from 52204, Pastor said that word shadow, you know, the feasts are a shadow of protection. He said that word shadow means protection. So let's look at the next Yahmatria. Under your protection, O Yahweh. Let's see what that means. We're going to look at the first number, 2928. Can I have my next slide? It means to conceal. Hidden, hid, secret, things hidden. To conceal by covering, by protecting, right? Keep secret, the secret place. Remember Psalm 91:1? He who abides under the shadow of the Almighty, right? Let's look at the next, if that doesn't convince you, let's look at the next number, 2166. Go ahead, next slide. 2166 means appointed time, times. Appointed time from 2165, appointed time or times. Times appointed. Remember, these are appointed feasts, appointed seasons to keep Yahweh's feast, but also he's going to protect us from that last 3.5 years, or the dividing of time. Can I have my next slide? The dividing of time, 1074. You see that? That's Pastor's tag. The dividing of time. Okay, look at that real close. But let's look at what 1095 means. They're off to the right. Can I have my next slide? Let's look at 1095 and think of Daniel 7:25. Okay, until a times, and the dividing of time. Next slide. Oh, really? 1095 means Daniel? You know, the great prophet Daniel that prophesied this for us? Can I have my next slide? And 179, let's go to the next slide. Remember, that means able. Can I have my next slide? 179 means able. Isn't this interesting? It's showing you where to go. It's not telling you to go anywhere else but here, to able, to learn this teaching. Can I have my next slide? My next slide? Oh, I'm sorry. 2166. Remember, we're going back now to under your protection, O Yahweh. We were looking at the dividing of time we were just looking at. But now we're back under your protection, O Yahweh. Now look, let's look at the next definition of 2166. Oh, wow. Euphrates River? Oh, that must be a coincidence, right? Well, what's fixing to take place? Pastor shows in this sermon from 522:04 that once the greatest part of this war kicks off around the Euphrates, those plagues are going to be carried everywhere. You think they're just going to be there? You think those microbes are just going to hang out in that area? The great deacon just got up here and showed you, okay, that they know. That they only know now because our pastor's been teaching us. They didn't know anything. We didn't know anything until we learned from the greatest teacher in the world. Can you go to the next slide? Now, in the 2007 Prophetic Word magazine, Pastor brought out the real cause of global warming. And he showed us in that first page, plagues are prophesied to take place again. You believe that, right? Can I have the next slide? Now I want you to watch really close, okay? It says, and the seventh Moloch poured out his bowl into the air. Now remember we were taught about that. It's not a bowl that Pastor threw up in the air. It's teaching that he gave us about this, what's causing the destruction of this planet. Okay? The global warming, the STDs that are causing the global warming. And the microbes, the killing of these tiny micro kingdoms that are there to protect us, to shield us from harm and danger. Okay, watch closely. Don't miss this. The first number is 3398. Let's see what it means. It means micros. Micros? It means micros, small, little, you know, the little things that are protecting us. Can I have my next slide? That word microbe comes from Greek micros. You see that? But let's see what else. Can I have the next slide? Who taught us about the tiny micro kingdoms? You see that? The tiny micro kingdoms. You see 1074? You see that? Who taught us about the tiny microbes? There was nobody else that knew. I didn't know anything about any of this. Okay, I didn't even go to school most times. You know, I was out doing what I wanted to do. And when biology came around, that was boring to me. You know, until Pastor started teaching and I started going, wow, this is really something, you know. Pastor taught it. Don't forget it. He taught us about true microbiology, not what they teach in those schools of higher learning. Go to the next slide. Now the next number, 3150, of the seventh Moloch poured his bowl into the air. Next slide. Oh, really? May Yahweh sprinkle. May Yahweh sprinkle? And you see Yahweh sprinkling there? You think that's a coincidence? There's too many of them. You're done with your excuses, right? There's just too many of them. It's piled up to the heaven now. You know, I know what the scripture means now when it says, if you had to write the books to contain all the works of Yahshua, the world couldn't contain the books. Sprinkled of Yahweh, it says. Can I have my next slide? Well, sprinkled with what? The ashes of the red heifer that cleanse us from death and these plagues that are fixing to come, but only if we obey. Can I have my next slide? The next number is 525, and let's see the next slide. 525 means in the sense of training, skilled, an architect, one brought up. Remember, one brought up, Yeshurun, the great overseer Israel Hawkins, brought up by Yahweh. From 539, carried, enduring, confirmed, established, faithful, put your trust. Yes, we must put our trust. He's reliable. We can trust everything he says. Look. Look at the miracles you're seeing. These are miracles. Can I have my next slide? 525 in the Greek means to remove. To free a person from something. To rid a person of a thing. It's called death. That's what the sprinkling's for. It's to remove death from us. Now go to my next slide. If you remember Pastor's birth date, 8/28, I will make prominent the sprinkled. Remember that? I will make prominent the sprinkled. Yes, you will not die. If not just you take the sprinkling, but must be every word of Yahweh you live by. We must live by every word of Yahweh. Look at the word Israel. Go to my next slide. The word Israel, the name Israel, it's from 8280. Drop the 0. And it means to prevail, to have power as a prince. To prevail. Yes, the gates of hell will not prevail, but Israel will, along with everyone that stands by his side. Let's go to my next slide. Look at this. Sprinkling of ashes of the red heifer. Really? Look at the middle number. 2004? Wasn't that when we learned it? Really? What a miracle. What's a miracle? Now let's look at the next number, 986, the one to the right. Let's go to the next one. 986 means, I think I jumped ahead. 986 means confidence and hope. Now watch this. You see this book of Yahweh? Go to the next slide, please. It's 986 pages. This is your confidence and your hope. You must stand on this. No, that doesn't mean get up on top of it and look, I'm standing on Yahweh, you know. And also don't, okay, never mind. I won't go there, but 986 means confidence and hope. We must put our trust in the every word of Yahweh, okay? That is our confidence and that is our hope. And remember, on that page, Revelation 22:14 says, blessed are those who keep his laws, for they will have right to the tree of life. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at the next number from the sprinkling of the ashes of the red heifer. It's word number 334, and it means to shut up, to bind, to close up, to shut. It means to seal. You see this? It's the sealing of the saints, the last law that seals us. This is the last law that, okay? The sealing of the saints. Remember, the feast of binding. You remember that word? The feast of binding the sheaves, the first fruits. Who's the first fruits? You are. You are the first fruits to Yahweh and the Lamb. Revelation 14:4, 144, the 144,000. Is that a coincidence? I'm telling you. This is just so magnificent. Now let's look at something. Let's add up all the numbers in that Yahmatria we just did. Can I have my next slide? You take the 986, the 2004, and the 324, and you get 3324. Let's see what that means. It means full, filled with. Listen up. Write it down. It means, last time I got up here and I almost got a note. I got to slow down a little bit. So I'm going to go in slow motion to let you know the next part. It means filled with, full. Filled with what? That was 3324. Let's look at 3324 in the Hebrew. It means oil, fresh oil, the golden oil, filled. This last law, this sealing of the saints. But remember, you got to have all the other laws that go with it, right? Are we being obedient to the every word of Yahweh and putting our confidence and hope in every word? That as taught by the house of Yahweh, that's in our baptism form, not as we think we should be taught. Can I have my next slide? It means to press out oil, to make oil. Next slide. The seventh warning. We're getting it now. Look, seventh warning, 1074. Pastor's tag. Next slide. Now watch this. The plague of the hail in Revelation 16:21. You see those numbers? 613, 1074, and 179. Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at 613. It means a band, a bond, to bind, to make ready, to order, to join. It's the word used in tethering his donkey to the vine, tethering the colt to the choicest branch. And remember, Zechariah 6:13, the council of peace is between who? That's right, them both, Israel Hawkins and Yahshua Messiah. The next one, next slide. 6:13 in the Greek means to hide, to conceal, to hide away. Remember the talit that covers us. The talit represents the 613 laws. That's what covers us. That's what protects us. Obedience to those laws. Next slide. Now, the first day of Pentecost, of this extended feast, when you add up all the 7 lamps, look at that, and the last one is Abel, it's 519. That was the first day, right? And isn't that what we talked about in the workshops? The lamps? That day? Wow, what a coincidence. Come on, Matt, my next slide. This is it. This is it. I got my last thing here. Now, Pastor taught us about cleansing yourself. Cleansing yourself is not a request, it's a law. This first sermon on the ashes of the red heifer, 3604. When you add that to this, to today, up to today, it's 5,190 days. There's that 519 again. So let's see what it means. 5190. It means to lift, to bear, to offer, to take up, like to offer something to Yahweh. Remember the first fruits to Yahweh that are offered up. 5190 in the Greek means to hit the mark, the opposite of missing the mark, to reach, to obtain, to receive. To receive. Receive what? Well, I'll leave that up to our great overseer to decide. Are you in suspense? Praise Yahweh. It's been an honor and a privilege. If you'd all please stand. Hey, by the way, until the time and the dividing of times, you see that? There's the P.O. box to Peaceful Solution, and there's when Pastor was conceived. And 2442 means to wait. Blessed are those who wait to the 1,335 days. May Yahweh bless your understanding. If you'd all please stand, it's my great